Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Fractal Midi R2 or the Fractal Arc Midi 2. However which way around you want to put it. Either way, it's a Fractal Arc and it's the second version, the V2. I know people are going to be instantly saying about, oh my god, it's actually got a window on it, because they were meant to have released it. They were meant to have released an aftermarket panel for the first one and they never did. They waited and did it for this. I will say right from the get-go that it's $74.95 I found it listed for in the UK. But what we're going to do now is we're going to break straight on and start having a good old look at this. And then obviously go right the way through, and then we'll end up with a nice big conclusion at the end, TTL style. Okay then peeps, starting from the top at the front, as we always do. This here is your reset button. Then we've got a microphone and a headphone connections. Got a power button there, little rectangular one, and you can see there's a little like LED slot there. That's your power LED. Two USB 3s, and then we've got a fan controller on this side. I'll show you on the inside, but it does have connections for 3 fans on it. The case comes with 3 fans out of the box as well, so you can fan control all of the fans. The options here are 12 volt, 7 volt, and then 5 volt. One thing I will say with the 5 volt is, depending on the fans that you get, some fans won't start when volted down that low. So that could possibly be a negative point for you. But if you do change the fans and you find that yours won't start, then all I would personally say was I would think that as being an off switch. But anyway, each to their own. I just thought I'd say anyway. Anyway, we moved into the front. We've got 2 optical bays. If I move the camera back real quick, you can see the mesh area on the front of the case. And if you click that, there's 2 little releases that you need to do. You can remove that out, and then that exposes the fans behind. There's one 140mm fan fitted in the front, one 140 in the back, and another 140 in the roof. It is dust filtered as well. It's just a foam sandwich, for want of a better term. You can see it's kind of sandwiched in. To be able to clean this properly, I mean, you would be able to get in it, you know, the Hoover fittings that you get. I've actually got one here with like the brush bits on it. That's all I ever do for when I clean mine. That's the easiest way I find to do it. But if you really wanted to, you could remove the tabs and take the foam out and wash it. As you can see with the front of the case, you can fit, well, we've got a 140 in there. You can fit a second if you want as well, but there are the mounts for 120s. And if I grab my ruler quick, I'm just going to have a quick look at these 120s, because that's a 15mm front to front there, and a 15 there as well. So both the fan gaps are 15mm, which is kind of what I would say, especially with the 120s, is an international standard. The front can be easily removed. This is something that I was quite surprised with. If I unclip the fan again, you can take the front off, but the fan's mounted directly into the front panel. Now this is plastic, but if you have a look, it's got kind of like an anodised brushed aluminium effect to it. You will either love that or hate it. It's better than just black plastic, I think, to give it a little bit of texture. It gives it a bit of character. One thing I will say, we'll go into it in more depth later, but the front of the case technically does support water cooling, but we have to talk about removing drive cages and stuff. So as you can see, all pops on quite nice. The plastic is really sturdy as well. It's not flimsy or anything at all. It's fairly rigid. Does look pretty good. It does feel pretty good, I should say. And another thing that's quite good, if you've got the thick handle at the bottom, so you can remove it, but the top panel is separate, so you don't have to worry about that. That's where all the switches and everything still are. And it just pushes over it. You don't have to hit it like it's been misbehaving like I did. But what I'm going to do now is I'll show you the roof. Now the roof panel does quite match the front really when you think about it, apart from the mesh on the front doesn't go right the way up. Obviously we've got one standard kind of like bit of mesh across the whole bit of part of the the roof of the case. Now there are 2 screws around the back that you need to remove, but once you've taken those out, which I already have, if you pull the roof panel back, it can be removed. Again, this has got a dust filter in on the back, which is sandwiched in. Personally, what I would say is if you end up using the roof fans as exhaust, I would say get rid of this foam, because it's just going to slow the air that you can blow out. Once you've got the fans blowing out, you haven't really got too much of a problem. If you want to get really finicky and you've only got a couple of fans in, you can leave the foam over the front bit so that you don't get any dust settling in and help stop air being drawn in through. But again, it's just me being picky about stuff. Now let me pull the case in a bit, so right, that we can see. So we've got in the roof, there's a mount for a 200mm fan right in the very middle. It does come with a 140 fitted here, but we've also got another 140 there that you can use. That's a 15mm gap there. So that's a, say for argument's sake, if you wanted to use one of the new 280mm coolers, the Corsair won't fit. The Corsair H110 won't fit, but the NZXT X60 will. You can fit the H90 in the roof. You can fit the X40 in the roof. It does have offset mounts for 120mm fans as well. And I will go into this in more depth a bit later on, but that does mean that rather than sitting in the middle, the likes of a H100 or a proper water cooling radiator, as in dedicated water cooling radiator, will sit slightly further away so that you've got better RAM clearance. So that means you can run a lot more stuff, so that's brilliant. The gaps are elongated for that, so I'm pretty sure they're 15 and 20mm supported. Yeah, you can get 20 in there just, and 15 is in the middle. You don't really have 20mm gaps with much stuff on the 120mm side stuff anymore, but it's it's there nonetheless. It does mean you've got a little bit of movement there should you want to move your stuff about. But there is another 120 and 140mm fan in the front should you want it as well. But you can't put a 360mm rad in the roof of this because the 120 is sat to one side, but the this one isn't. People may now be instantly think, oh, why didn't they have it all offset? The main reason is because of the optical bays at the front. It wouldn't be that hard to mod though if you wanted to get your hands dirty. But the roof goes back on just as easy as it came off. And I really do like that kind of real kind of subtle sleek look. There's no kind of like big fins or anything like that on the roof. Just a nice bit of mesh. I think it works really well. Anyway, now what we're going to do is I'll tell you what we will do. We will just come back like this and then slide down. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Now you can see me stood in the reflection. Now, the original Arc Midi, everyone was going on about a window, and when are they going to release the aftermarket window? When are they going to do this? When are they going to do that? And they never did get around to it. I did find out a little while ago though, the reason why they didn't release it for the Arc was because they had an Arc Midi V2 coming, this one, and they were going to make the window standard. So there you go, you've got it with a window, and it is smoked acrylic. It's not just clear, it's got just a slight tint to it. And to be fair, you don't see that on very many cases, and I actually quite like it because it gives it that kind of stealthy kind of look. You can just about see the components inside when you've not got the reflection of the tripod and everything on there. But if you zoom in, you can see the graphics card that's in there. You go, see, look, you can see everything starting to appear. I've just taken the heatsink out of it actually, getting it ready for the water cooling side of things, but you can still see the parts in there really easily. Now, So that will please many hardcore kind of Fractal stroke Arc fans from before. The fact that we have got a window, it's the same style stroke design window that they put in the R4 as well. I'm pretty sure it's the same size as well. I don't think it's the same size panel, but it is the same size window. But anyway, what I'll do is we'll just move the case around and we can have a look at the back. Now, as I have mentioned before, there's a 140mm fan in the back. Just the normal 7+1 layout for the PCIs. And then your PSU, you've got the mounts to be able to turn it both ways round, whether your power supply's got the, the opposite way round mounts anyway, but it's got two sets of mounts there. You've also got some more ventilation at the top. That can be handy for, letting that, the bit of air out of the back of the case that can just get sat just up here, like the hot air that can build up. So this does help with that, if you've not got, really good ventilation. But nonetheless, it is there. Now, if we turn the case round again, what I'll do is I'll take the side panel off, chop it off. Just a very plain, kind of easy side panel, tabs at the front that lock in, and then sliding locks on the top and bottom. Fairly rigid side panel as well. It's got a nice bit of weight to it where it's made out of steel. The powder coat is textured, as you can see in the reflection of the light. So it's not smooth, it's got a texture to it. It's meant to be like that though. But that, I think, does work quite well. Yeah. Hello, I was just making a video. Apologies for the interruption. Anyways, we've got the side panel off. Now, I've not made any great attempts to put the cables tied or anything. You see, I've not really used any cable ties. The clips here that are clipped up, the way the case come at standard. Now, one of the reasons I used to spend ages cable tidying stuff, so it was insanely tidy. But one of the reasons why I stopped is, to be fair, not a lot of people really go that in depth with their cable tidying. A lot of people are just happy to get the cables in and wedge the side panel on. So I kind of go with a medium ground now. So that's what they look like in there. You can see that I've got the two fans, so the rear and the rear and the roof fan wired in. The front fan was wired in. Where I pulled the side panel off, it's come off. But those are the three fans that you can control from inside the case. Now, we've got a fair amount of cable clips. We've got two at the top here. There's another one there, another one there, another one there, which gives you plenty of places to anchor your cables on when you're sliding them down the back. Sadly, there's none over here. I always think I want an extra one over here or something to be able to clip the 8-pin power down with. Anyway, it doesn't really make that much difference. Side panel room. We've got, I'd say, almost 25mm of space from the motherboard tray to the outside where the door will be. But on this side, you can see that we've got that ledge. The smallest bit, it's still an easy 20mm there, so there's plenty of room with that. You can see that the hard drive bays are set slightly further back on this side as well. So when you've got a mechanical hard drive in with all, your cables, should you want to populate a lot of these, you've got plenty of room around the back to get your SATAs and your SATA powers in, should you want to use them. And there's also a nice big open space down here that you've got extra, I won't say cable routing, but you can obviously put your SATAs in there if you want, or RAID cables or whatever you want. What we'll do is I'll spin the case around. I didn't have the side panel screwed on, which is why it slid off, but this is a good opportunity for me to be able to show you the smoked. As you can see, it's not completely clear. Anyway, spinning the case back round. In fact, what I'll do is bring it up nice and close so we can see. Let me just double check. There we go. Yeah, right. I did have an air heat sink in here. I had a D14 in it, to be fair, originally to do the testing with, but I pulled it all out again. A, I needed the CPU for something else, but B, because in a minute I'm going to show you a water cooling radiator fitted in the roof where it's offset. but plenty of room. Where we've got a 140mm fan in the back, that does give us that little bit extra more width, so you can get good meaty air heat sinks in there should you want. There's absolutely oodles of room. Pretty much what one of the good rule of thumbs to say is if you've got a 140mm fan in the back, then you can pretty much fit any air heat sink in there, including the ones like the Arc with the 140mm cooling fans and stuff on it, should you want to use them. Another thing, just put the flipping ruler down, but we've got a fairly long graphics card in here. Now this one it's over 300mm long. It's the HIS, yeah, it's about 330mm long. It's a HIS 7970, but it's the IceQ X2. That does go in just before the end of the hard drive bays. As you can see, I have got it in there. One thing I will say is this is a longer than normal 7970 because there's a good chunk of heatsink hanging out the end. So 7970s, 680s, you'll be able to get those all in there fine. You may just about get a 690 in there as well, because obviously that one's a little bit longer. But the thing is even if you do have one of the old school massively long graphics cards, you can just unscrew these screws at the front, give it a tug. We're right on the limits of the graphics card. We can give it a tug and it comes out, as you can see. Something else which is quite cool, we can't do it with the graphics card in, but you can turn the hard drive cage around and fit it back in that way, so that the air was blowing straight over the top or straight through the fan. So the fan's going through that way. It does then become a bit of a pain in the bum because you have to pull the hard drives out internally, but I suppose you could, slide it out and do it that way. You can also remove this bottom section of hard drive. On the bottom there are in fact I'm going to do it for you just to show you just how easy it is. There's 4 screws. You just buzz these off. Bum 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 bum. Tight screw. Right, so we've got those removed. And then I do believe there are a couple more in the front. One, 2. So once you've got all those removed, you can then simply lift it out. Obviously I need to unclip my hard drive base. Now if you want to remove these, this is kind of under the assumption that you've not got a lot of mechanical bays. If you do need to fit some mechanical hard drives, you can get some 5.25 to 3.5 inch adapters, and you can get 2 mechanical hard drives in one optical bay. So technically you can have 2 mechanicals up here and still have an optical drive in there should you be still using the aging mechanical discs. I don't, to be fair. People ask me how I play games. Steam. Simple. I don't use the CDs. The only time I use CDs, in all honesty, is when hardware's so new that the actual bit of kit isn't on the manufacturer's website yet. I've been saying that for ages, but obviously where I get stuff new sometimes, but even then I just use an external and plug it in, run the quick bit of software that I need, and that's it. But certainly not for games or anything like that anymore. And with films as well, I don't really watch like DVD or Blu-ray films on the discs. So we've got this big open section at the front. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to fit a radiator in the front, I'm going to fit a radiator in the roof, and then I'll come back to show you that you can get an awful lot of water cooling kit in one of these cases. Still have plenty of room for other stuff. One thing I forgot to mention before was the USB 3 cable. It's got an internal USB 3, which obviously a lot of motherboards have got now, but it does come with a USB 2 connection as well. Now it's only USB 3 on the front, but what they've done is that if you haven't got the USB 3 internal, you can plug this one in. But something I will stress is don't plug both in, because if you plug both in and then you connect, say for example, a USB stick or something, there's going to be 2 lots of power going to it, so you could nuke your USB stick. Now that won't be their fault. It does come with a sticker saying don't plug both in, but I'm just kind of like pointing it out to explain to you the possibilities of why. And I've not got any old USB 2 sticks that I want to nuke at the moment to test and prove this theory. But yeah, so don't. So that's just another little add-in of it does support both, but only ever plug one or the other in. Okay then peeps, what I've done is I've fitted a 60mm, where it's an RX 240, but it's 60mm thick XSPC radiator in the roof, in push-pull. There is a set of fans above this as well. One thing I will say is just to kind of give you an idea, if I tip it that way, you can see that it's kind of level, or this comes exactly level with where your CPU, like right in the middle of your CPU will be. So, general rule with that is, even with push-pull, you're still going to be able to get your CPU like barbs and hose and all that kind of stuff on, and there's plenty of room there. I will also say that we've actually got bloody loads of room. I'll get it around the right way. Come on, Thomas. There's a good 45mm of room for RAM there still as well, where this radiator is sat so far over. It's just like the original Arc. There's only a couple of case manufacturers that are doing this offset radiator for the roof, and it's brilliant. One thing I will say to you though is, if you have a look, you can just see with the way the light is over here, the radiator is quite tight up against the optical bays there. Now I have got it pushed right the way that way, I had to look, but that's probably the reason why there's a couple of millimeters budge, so that you can move the rad backwards and forwards. I've obviously got the thicker end tank up at this end, which is probably, with the config of the, you know, the way it's laid out, would be where you would want it anyway. But that is something you know, to keep in mind. But most 240mm radiators, you won't have an issue in here because of that little bit of a budge. And if you do have a problem, you just be able to spin it round. It'll probably mean that you can't have the end tanks, you know, with the barbs up this end. But then, depending on what you're doing with reservoirs and stuff, you wouldn't want to. We've got another 60mm thick radiator in the front, again in push-pull. You can see the set of fans on this side. If I spin it round, I've not put the mesh back on, but it, as I said before, the radiator bolts into the front panel. So if I give it a tug, that's what she said. Come on Tom, just grab hold of it, there we go. You can take the radiator out altogether, and it's dead simple because it's a lovely wide cutout here, because you can put a 140 rad on as well if you wanted. 140 fanned rad, you can still get a 280 in there, that's what I mean, and you just fit it all in together like that. Now obviously with that much radiator space, you've not got a lot of hard drive room in there, and you would still have to get quite creative, you know, where you wanted to put a reservoir and stuff, but it most definitely can be done. You could easily get, if you have any mechanicals up in the optical bays, you can have a reservoir on the fans here, or one of the floor mounted ones. You can even get a D5 that mounts on the floor now. XSPC have got one, in fact. I've actually got it here, so what I'll do is I'll just show you quickly. I'll whiz it out. And the D5 is a brilliant pump to use, because then you can you get the Varia one, you can turn it up and down. As you can see, the D5 goes in this side, But what you can do is you can have it, well, you can have it whatever way round that you want really, but you can just mount it in the floor. You can get an adapter for this, so that you can put a barb in there, so you could use that as a fill port area as well. Out, in, or you could have that as in if you put the fill port thing on it. And you can just have that mounted in the floor, gives you loads of room. Stick a solid state drive up the back of the case. Really not a problem at all. But hopefully that will give you some, let me push the case over so it's central. Hopefully that will give you some inspiration for what you can do with this rig. It's epic for water cooling. A mid-tower case with this much water cooling support was brilliant. The only way they could make this any better, for me personally, would be having a 360mm radiator support in the front. There technically is the room there, but it would be very difficult for them to engineer it in to make it easy for you to switch between hard drives to 360. But again, that's just kind of me being ultra picky, as I always am. But nevertheless, awesome case laid out that way. What I'm going to do now is get the office tidied up a little bit, get this moved to one side, and then we will move on to the conclusion. Okay then peeps, what I've done is I've fitted a 60mm, where it's an RX 240, but it's 60mm thick XSPC radiator in the roof, in push-pull. There is a set of fans above this as well. One thing I will say is just to kind of give you an idea, if I tip it that way, you can see that it's kind of level, or this comes exactly level with where your CPU, like the right in the middle of your CPU will be. So general rule with that is, even with push-pull, you're still going to be able to get your CPU like barbs and hose and all that kind of stuff on, and there's plenty of room there. I will also say that we've actually got bloody loads of room. I'll get it around the right way. Come on, Thomas. There's a good 45mm of room for RAM there still as well, where this radiator is sat so far over. It's just like the original Arc. There's only a couple of case manufacturers that are doing this offset radiator for the roof, and it's brilliant. One thing I will say to you though is, if you have a look, you can just see with the way the light is over here, the radiator is quite tight up against the optical bays there. Now, I have got it pushed right the way that way, I had to look, but that's probably the reason why there's a couple of millimetres budge, so that you can move the rad backwards and forwards. I've obviously got the thicker end tank up at this end, which is probably, with the config of the, you know, the way it's laid out, would be where you would want it anyway. But that is something you know, to keep in mind. But most 240mm radiators, you won't have an issue in here because of that little bit of a budge. And if you do have a problem, you just be able to spin it round. It'll probably mean that you can't have the end tanks, you know, with the barbs up this end. But then, depending on what you're doing with reservoirs and stuff, you wouldn't want to. We've got another 60mm thick radiator in the front, again in push-pull. You can see the set of fans on this side. If I spin it round, I've not put the mesh back on, but it, as I said before, the radiator bolts into the front panel. So if I give it a tug, that's what she said. Come on Tom, just grab hold of it, there we go. You can take the radiator out altogether, and it's dead simple because it's a lovely wide cutout here, because you can put a 140 rad on as well if you wanted. 140 fanned rad, you can still get a 280 in there, that's what I mean, and you just fit it all in together like that. Now obviously with that much radiator space, you've not got a lot of hard drive room in there, and you would still have to get quite creative, you know, where you wanted to put a reservoir and stuff, but it most definitely can be done. You could easily get, if you have any mechanicals up in the optical bays, you can have a reservoir on the fans here, or one of the floor mounted ones. You can even get a D5 that mounts on the floor now. XSPC have got one, in fact. I've actually got it here, so what I'll do is I'll just show you quickly. I'll whiz it out. And the D5 is a brilliant pump to use, because then you can you get the Varia one, you can turn it up and down. As you can see, the D5 goes in this side, But what you can do is you can have it, well, you can have it whatever way round that you want really, but you can just mount it in the floor. You can get an adapter for this so that you can put a barb in there, so you could use that as a fill port area as well. Out, in, or you could have that as in if you put the fill port thing on it, and you can just have that mounted in the floor, gives you loads of room. Stick a solid state drive up the back of the case. Really not a problem at all. But hopefully that will give you some, let me push the case over so it's central. Hopefully that will give you some inspiration for what you can do with this rig. It's epic for water cooling. A mid-tower case with this much water cooling support is brilliant. The only way they could make this any better, for me personally, would be having a 360mm radiator support in the front. There technically is the room there, but it would be very difficult for them to engineer it in to make it easy for you to switch between hard drives to 360. But again, that's just kind of me being ultra picky, as I always am. But nevertheless, awesome case laid out that way. What I'm going to do now is get the office tidied up a little bit, get this moved to one side, and then we will move on to the conclusion. Hokey chokes then, peeps. I'm going to put my remote up here for a second because you always see me pick it up anyway. So, the Arc. What we'll do is we'll say the award and then we'll move on and kind of explain all the ins, outs and R's why. To be fair, it's a pretty much of a no-brainer gold award. I love this case. It's nice and subtle. It's like subtle designing. I love the way the mesh is all the way along the roof. Nice subtle mesh on the front. Really like that. All kind of like nice and understated. The stealth window, the smoked window. Because look, if you have a look, it's not just clear, and I just smashed that in my face. So you've got a smoked window on it. It's got a lovely stealth feel to it. Two 140s or two 120s in the front, you can decide. It does come with a 140 in the front, 140 in the rear, and a 140 in the roof out the box. But you can obviously then swap all the fans around. You can put another 120. You can swap the rear out for a 120, depending on the fans that you're rocking. You can have three 120s or three 140s in the roof. You can have a 200 in the roof. Air cooling options are just ridiculous. So you've got all those fan choices. You can also have a 240 or a 280 radiator in the front. And we've put a 60mm thick one in push-pull, so that would easily mean that you can get an 80mm thick radiator monster rad in there as well. And there's room for a push-pull monster in the front as well. Roof, I would say, don't go any bigger than 60mm in push-pull, or at a push, a monster 80mm rad with a single set of fans. I wouldn't really want to be going down any lower because it will become an absolute ball ache to hose up your CPU block and stuff like that. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I'm just saying that it will be, fairly kind of, it will get really difficult. You'd have to be pretty inventive or be like a contortionist or something. But nevertheless, it could be done. Plenty of room for RAM. Although we were using low profile, you can get at least 45mm RAM in there, as well as getting the radiator in. So you're up to the point there where you're bloody laughing, really. The fact that you can get two rads in here as well easily means that you can have a nice, quiet, dual radiator loop, but it will, you could easily call your CPU and your GPU with this. I always say 240 minimum for a CPU with a decent overclock or, stupidly low speed fans. So adding that 240 in the front as well, or 280, whatever you wanted to use, would mean you'd have just loads of cooling, nice low fans. It'd be brilliant. One thing I will say also is you could get the NZXT X60, the Kraken. It will fit in the roof of this fine. The mounts are there. One thing I would say though is I would go steady with how you kind of said it. I don't think that you'd be able to get away with push-pull and big RAM. I have had it in there with a single set, and you could just get it around everything. If you started adding in that second set of fans, you could end up starting to foul your RAM block there. So really, if you're going, big water cooling and stuff like that, I would personally say stick with the 120 sized ones. So either a normal water cooling one like this, or the H100i or something. It will fit, but like I said, it does start to get iffy around that point. And for the less experienced builders and stuff out there that might get a little bit flustered with stuff being tight and not having the tools and stuff, this is the easy way, is to stick with the 120s. But yeah, and then we've still got the hard drive mounts. There's what have we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 8 in total, and you've got loads of different ways that you can config those. You don't obviously have to remove the front. You can still have those in there. You could still, when you think about it, have all your hard drives in there, and still have a big thick radiator in the roof like this for a nice CPU loop, and you could still get everything in there. It really is, for 75 quid. It's a brilliant little case, and really the only thing that I've got to pick about with it is the plastic front panel. And to be fair, it is a nice sturdy plastic front panel. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't necessarily look particularly out of place or anything as well, but I know there are people out there that are just going to turn their nose up at it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. I actually really like it. I've been saying for quite some time that I think we needed a MIDI tower case with a window, with decent water cooling support, that, you know, didn't cost the earth. And for 75 quid, I know you're going to end up, if you did want it for water cooling, you will end up spending a lot of money on the water cooling by the time you've got your radiators and everything like that in. But if you wanted a small form factor, or smaller form factor, so you've not got a sort of like a full tower jobby, that has got everything placed in the right place that you can keep it all in and nice and tight, you could make an amazingly tidy, quiet, powerful, cool rig in this, and then not end up spending too much money on the case, but without it looking cheap. And that's a big one, really, is that you may be able to find other cases out there, but they'll either be more expensive or just won't look the part. I mean, especially where it does come with a window out the box as well. There's not really a lot of competition out there for it. But nevertheless, because of all the other options, you've got all the other fan options rather, it could be a great air-cooled case as well. It's a bit of a no-brainer, really. I really, really like it. I'd actually love it if they did a white one, obviously. But yeah, brilliant case. Absolutely love it. 100%. If you're in the market for this type of thing, you really do need to be giving this a look. I properly like it. It really does tickle my fancy. Nice stealthy. I mean, there's so many things buzzing around in my head at the moment. Oh, you could do this, you could do that, you could get that in there, you could be able to do this with it. Properly good. Actually really like it. So yeah, hopefully I've given you enough details about all your water cooling, the all-in-one water cooling options that you can get in there. I didn't say, obviously, because the radiator is this thick, you can easily get a H100i in there in push-pull if you wanted. Because obviously you've got masses of room in there with that 60mm rad in there. So there are oodles of options. There's not really very many limitations with this at all, other than the fact that once you've got 2 lots of water cooling radiators in, you're going to have to get clever with your mechanical hard drive options, should you have them. But that's it. That's why I gave it a gold award. There is absolutely not a second doubt in my mind. It's not a rusty gold or anything like that. That's a properly, fully fledged, spit polished gold. Absolutely brilliant case. So yeah, nice one, Fractal. But for now, at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with a big cheesy grin on his face. Out.